Hello, everyone. I'm Scott Hoyt. I am founder of Fantasy Sports Strategies, and welcome to episode 2 of Under the Hoodie. Just a quick reminder for everybody. Under the Hoodie is produced by Fantasy Sports Strategies, and our sole intent by this podcast is really designed and truly intent to help early stage companies navigate through this very evolving, fast-paced fantasy sports and gaming ecosystem. And today, I'm actually very excited about having my guest. She's somebody that I've known for a while, admires from the very beginning of this, and a woman who has a great deal of respect throughout the industry, Kamini Manivannan, who's the CEO and founder of Laces Sports. So here's some funny facts before we actually get Kamini on here. She's a data science professional with a background from two of my favorite colleges, Northwestern University in my hometown, Chicago, and she's a Bulldog, University of Georgia, which is right down the street from where I live. And maybe even more interesting is she is an avid fantasy sports participant. So let's talk about Laces Sports for a second, and she'll correct me if that's the right terminology, but she's building this app. It's a very cool app, and it's a business app called Laces that's specifically designed for women and folks who are new to the fantasy sports space and wants to educate and get them in on the fun and the opportunity. And we'll talk a lot about that, I'm sure. And there's a lot of paperwork on Kamini because her background is so well read here. I got to go through it all, and then we'll get into the fun stuff. But so in addition to founding this Laces Sports, she has worked for some very iconic companies. She started with Capgemini. She's worked for the NFL, the Brooklyn Nets, and those are pretty impressive organizations in and of themselves. So, and maybe the best part of this is I've gotten to know Kamini a bit over the past year, and I'm always fascinated with the journey of what Laces is doing, the story behind it. And I think it's an opportunity, personally, to present from her perspective how she's going to enfranchise literally hundreds of thousands of women into a typically male-oriented ecosystem. So I'm looking forward to the next 30 minutes here and look forward to our conversation. Welcome to the show, Kamini.
Thanks for having me. Did I really do all those things that you named?
I think so. I hope so.
Sometimes you think back, and when you said Capgemini, I had this flashback of when I first started as a consultant, and I had no idea what I was doing, I feel like, and no idea where my path would lead. But consulting is always a good stepping stone, I feel like, when you're not really sure about what to do.
Yeah, and that's an excellent way to start this because I'm a big believer that in order to look forward, you got to look to the past. Mm-hmm. And I always view it as, let's take a step back down memory lane, or let's talk about the early days. So let's talk about that. So you've got this varied background from consulting into the sports world. When, and maybe the question is really, have you always been a sports enthusiast fan?
Always. I was very lucky to grow up in a house that loved sports. Didn't start with American football. It actually started with tennis.
Oh.
Tennis is our family's first love. I grew up coming to the US Open as a child. I played tennis my whole life. I played all throughout high school. I still play recreationally now, but that is my first love is tennis. And that'll never change probably.
And when did you become attached and, maybe in some cases passionately attached to fantasy sports?
It usually just takes one person to ask if you want to join a league. And everyone, I feel like, remembers their first league that they ever joined. And I think I was the one that was joining because they needed to fill a spot in the league. I think somebody might have dropped. And at that point, I didn't really care that much. This was probably 10 years ago now. Um, and yeah, I joined then, and it takes, as you know, probably it takes a good season to learn how to get screwed over in fantasy. You learn about how injuries can ruin your season. You learn about how trades can ruin your season, or you can learn about how a rookie makes your season. So there's a learning curve, as you and I have talked about
Yeah.
before.
Is so fantasy sports for you? Football, baseball, all of the above, basketball. What's
It is football, and then it transitioned to basketball. I became commissioner of my basketball league, which I quickly realized how much more work it actually is. And that one just started as like a fun thing, but then we quickly learned how involved you actually have to be. You have to be on top of it. It's a daily type of activity. You have to be on top of everything: injuries, home games, away games. A lot more strategy and prediction, I would say, in fantasy basketball.
all right? So here's a big question for you: how you doing in your fantasy football league this year, or leagues? I don't know how
I
many you're in. I don't know how many you're in, but what's
I
the
was
question
in
for you?
I was in three with three formats.
Oh,
I was in a best ball league, I was in a survivor league, and just a regular league. I am out in all three. Um, but sometimes that's a good thing for my own mental health. But it's always fun to just keep in touch with your friends and that community that's around fantasy football. And now that we're in this industry, it's all anyone is talking about
yeah,
all the time.
yeah.
What about you? How did you do in yours?
So I won't even tell you how many leagues I have because it's over 30.
Scott.
And now the good news is a lot of them are best balls, but some of
Okay.
them are managed leagues, and they're on every platform you can imagine, from Sleeper to CBS to ESPN to some of the custom high stakes leagues that are out there. You and I've chatted about this before. It's a lot of work, and I tell my wife that for about 19 weeks we'll get ourselves reacquainted after those 19 weeks are over,
Yeah.
and she fully supports that. And it's a lot, like you said, it's a lot of work, and I actually am the commissioner of two friends and family leagues. So those are a lot of work and fun. So it's all good.
You were flying to Vegas for something when we spoke in Canton, right? You were flying for the draft?
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where the big high stakes leagues drafts are. And that's always I've been doing that since
Has
2007.
to be in Vegas. It's a good excuse to go outside of FSGA, of course.
Yeah. And we'll talk about FSGA because we were both intimately involved with FSGA and the importance of that. But I'm gonna step off of fantasy sports just for a second because I want to talk a little bit about your very interesting background because here's somebody who's gotten a master's of science, a data scientist, did all these studies. And how did you use that technology to start what you started today?
Honestly, that's a good question. I think that's going to be applicable throughout this journey. And it becomes a little bit easier when you've done something similar like this
Yeah.
in a previous role. I think you and I have talked about this before about my role at the NFL and the type of analytics I looked at there. And I was looking at product analytics and different things that you can track, different metrics you can track on an app of a user clicking, viewing, watching, how many seconds they're watching. And so all those analytics that I was tracking, I have not forgotten those. And all of those translate to what I'm doing now. I didn't know at the time I was going to use it later, but those are all really interesting metrics, even when you want to report that to whoever is looking at these reports. They're all really interesting metrics because you don't realize how many millions of people are using these apps on a daily basis throughout the entire day, maybe when they should be working. But we're all guilty of looking at a fantasy app midday when you just need a break from your corporate job.
Is there any particular job that you had with the NFL, with the Brooklyn Nets, Capgemini that you have brought forward, or is there a little bit of every piece of that brought forward for you?
It is a little bit of everything. I definitely see my consulting practices seep in a lot more, and I think you can relate to this as well. Those consulting practices don't leave you, especially when it comes time to where we are now, which is in our beta testing phase. all of that comes into play because I did so much beta testing when I was in a consulting role, which is maybe a different story, but side story. When McDonald's was one of my clients when I was in consulting, and they have a global mobile app that you can order food, you can do takeout, delivery, whatever it is. But we were testing that every single day because millions and millions of customers are using that across the country. And they were getting as specific as remove salt from an order and see if it like goes through, remove ketchup, remove like the most specific things that we were testing in the mobile app, like making sure it works. All of that comes into play now because you want to make sure the user journey is exactly what you designed it to be at the end.
I've been at McDonald's University on many occasions in Chicago, and I
Yeah.
can vouch for you that is a crazy experience in a
It
lot of
is.
different ways. But
It
but what has made them successful is what you just described, which is the
yeah,
attention to detail, and it's engaging to the end user. So, all
yeah.
right, so we're gonna start to transition a little bit into Laces Sports, but I have to say, from knowing you like I have, is that how did you and I'm still just confused by this whole. How did you transition these great corporate jobs and said, "Wait a minute, I need to do my own thing"? What was it that propelled you? Did you have an aha moment?
Well, I think it started with my consulting role, and I think every consultant can relate to the burnout that
Yeah,
happens because when you're in your 20s, corporate knows that you are going to do whatever you can to prove yourself and prove your worth to a company. They easily take advantage of people who are younger because we'll do anything. We'll work the 70-hour, 80-hour, 90-hour weeks that so many people in their 20s do. And so I think I reached that point towards the fourth year that I was in a consulting role. I just said, I am not enjoying this anymore. Like, I think I've paid my dues and I can't do this. I also started my master's program when I was as a consultant. So I was a full time student and a full time consultant. So I reached that burnout quickly. But I think in my master's program, I took a sports analytics class. And one of the assignments was go research what jobs you can get in sports. And that's what started this entire journey was, wait, my consulting skills can translate to working for a sports team. Let's explore this. And so that one assignment changed everything.
and so that went from that assignment to where you are today. Let's talk about Laces Sports and what market it's addressing, why you felt like there was a huge void, which you and I've had this conversation. I think what you're doing is phenomenal because it is an unaddressable market that you are addressing and in a very male dominant industry. And so I think what you're doing is spot on, but I kind of want to hear it from you.
Sure. So I'll give you the rundown of what Laces Sports is. So, Laces Sports is a fantasy sports platform designed for women and casual fans. It has an educational component, so it will teach you how to play the game. You will go through an onboarding experience that says, "Hey, Scott, welcome to fantasy football. This is made for whether you're a pro or a beginner. Anybody can play. It's not also just for women. Anybody can play the game, but it's specifically designed for beginners, which just primarily happen to be a lot of women." And so, in addition to the educational component, it also has a loyalty component. So, whatever points that you earn, right now we earn points in fantasy when we play, but at the end of the season, those points disappear. And so, those points, we're going to make them redeemable at brands that you know and love, whether it's Nike or Sephora, Lululemon, name a brand. So the goal is to make this educational, interactive, but also let's reward you for coming and doing something that you thought you would never do. There are so many girls, friends that I have, so many women friends that I have that I never would have thought they would ever play fantasy, and I've never talked to them about sports ever. But now more than ever, so many of those people I'm now having these conversations with.
I've heard you on many panels at the FSGA, in Canton, at fantasy, the Fantasy Sports Expo, and it's always the most attended panel of any conference. It's the all women panel talking about women in sports in general. But there was so much interaction with the audience on that. It's just a great journey, and I'd love to hear that because I think there's a lot of diversity needed in the fantasy sports and even the gaming industry that women in what you're doing and can be addressed is a very positive thing. So I know you and I've had many conversations with that, and thank you for kind of sharing how that all works. But the bigger question is, when are you open for business?
We are now in our beta testing phase. Finally, you would think that building a fantasy app, it sounds a little bit easier said than done, but there are many, many parts to this as I've learned through being in FSGA. The first time I attended this conference, side story, first time I attended this conference, every single person that I met they said, at some point, you will probably need to work with me. So here's my card. And when you figure it out, give me a call. So
and
that
and
was,
here's how much I will invoice you at the same
yeah,
time.
exactly, exactly. So that's the funny part. But we are in our beta testing phase. The launch date is not announced just yet,
Oh,
but
I thought for sure we would have a big announcement on this podcast.
you'll get the exclusive when I have
Good.
that date.
I'm
Uh,
holding you to that.
yes, yes, yes. Maybe I'll come back on here and announce it for next
You know what? You're always welcome on the show, always.
time.
Or just
Okay.
call me either. I don't care.
I love it. I love it. But yeah, the app is basically done. So we're just internally testing it now with friends, family, and it's still going out to a couple more groups of people. You're included in this, so don't worry.
Yeah,
Um,
I've subscribed to your newsletter, which I think is really cool. I imagine
yeah,
it
it's
takes up.
another new addition I actually haven't even talked about really with anyone yet.
Yeah, I've seen you recently on socials. Your little 30-second snippets out there, which are really cool. You did the World Cup thing. Your newsletter's good. So you've done just a tremendous job of promoting what you're really trying to accomplish over time here.
I
So,
appreciate
based on your beta testing, you friends and family, what kind of feedback have you received to this point?
So far, it's been good. There are some screens that aren't as intuitive as I thought they were because I designed this whole experience. I designed every screen, I had our engineers design it, but they are just engineers. So it's kind of up to me to design it. They're not like a designer. So it's up to me to design it. And, through these amazing tools now, Versal, and Lovable. They're amazing tools. You can design everything in a matter of seconds. So the design part definitely took a long time, but some of the screens need to be rearranged. The onboarding could probably ask a couple more questions to really understand who the user is. But so far, so good. It's pretty neutral, pretty simple thus far.
Yeah, and you know this as well as anybody in this industry. When you're developing a new app, that whole user engagement has to be simple, has to be
Mhm.
intuitive. You don't have a whole lot of attention, much time to grab that attention. So yeah, it's that's a pretty powerful thing you need to accomplish. So talk a little bit about the financial model. Is it an ad based, subscription based, sponsorship based, all the above?
It will be subscription based. And then our partnerships that we form will also be a source of revenue. Trying to keep this financial model as simple as possible to just be able to explain it to people who ask. But I've narrowed it down finally to our partnerships. And then I think eventually, once we have more traction, ads will come into play. But I feel like sometimes that's the easiest answer to give. Oh
Sure.
yeah, just like we'll make money through ads. I mean, anybody can make money through ads. So I don't usually say that answer to people, but our partnerships will be really, really important. I think down the line when we have start having those conversations. Really,
And I know we also had this conversation, but I want everyone to hear it as well because, as you know, I'm a big branding guy. I love Laces Sports. How did that come about?
um, the name was a suggestion from a friend, and she said laces is still feminine enough. So you have laces of a shoe, you have laces on a football. Lace is also like a material that you can wear, and so that transition to Lacey, who is our little purple football mascot,
Love it.
which now I'm thinking about a graphic that you can show. Nick, I will send this to you. Um, so it's a little purple football. That was also a suggestion by a potential investor who said, "What about Lacey for the AI companion in all of this?" So she walks and talks. She smiles. She's friendly. She's kind of like your AI companion when you get onto the app. She's going to wave to you and be your personal trainer.
So you just mentioned something that I feel compelled to bring up, which is AI.
Mhm.
AI is really penetrating every aspect of businesses today, and the sports industry is certainly being you know involved with AI, and it sounds like you are as well. Any firsthand experiences how that's going for you? Good, indifferent?
It has worked for me. I have not put it in my beta test. The integration with ChatGPT isn't in the beta test yet, but it has worked for me when I use it on the side. I actually used ChatGPT integrated with Sport Radar data to win a fantasy basketball game when I tried it the first time. I didn't even know that integration was possible. This was in the earlier days when I first came up with the idea. I just built a basic Chrome extension that it took a screenshot of my lineup, and I had asked it a simple question like, is this trade a good idea? I had just traded 2 point guards. I put a trade proposal in. I traded 2 point guards, and it said, don't do that based on sport radar data. So that was really cool. That like kind of validated that, this is possible. This was probably a little bit like almost a year ago
Yeah.
now when I first came up with the idea.
Yeah, a lot of the fantasy football analytics that are out there are using AI for exactly
You
what
have,
you just
you have
described.
to now. You're going to fall behind if you don't.
Yeah, you are. And I think we're going to hear more about that in our conference in February and at the
Mhm.
FSGA. We're going to talk about FSGA here in a second, but I want to kind of talk a little bit about what feedback, what lessons have you learned? Keep in mind that this whole podcast is really to help small startups, early stage companies, and listening to people like you tell about lessons learned, the things you had to overcome. For you, I know you're building a business in a typically male dominant industry. I'm sure there's some things there that you'd like to share, but any advice that you could give or anything that you did within this particular time that you've been doing this that you'd love to, be able to, share that with the audience.
Yeah. I think as a founder, there's two different worlds of this. There's lessons of being a founder, and then there's lessons of building in a male dominated industry. They're kind of two different ways I can go. But I think first things that come to mind as a founder is that you have to be your biggest champion every single day. You have to believe in your idea every single day. You also have to be okay with feedback. You can be so close to your idea, which, as you know, this idea, I'm very passionate about it. This stems from like my childhood, my passion, but you have to be open to feedback because sometimes it's not as important to somebody else who you're trying to bring in to this world of sports. Especially for my audience, my target demographic, a lot of them could care less about what's going on in the sports industry. So I think keep in mind of be okay with feedback. Um, that's definitely number one. And then yeah, be your own champion is number two. Believe in your idea
I
all
mean,
the
that's
way.
great advice, and I think I would personally like to add one thing, which I know you probably said indirectly, but I'm a big because I've had a couple startups myself, and I've always told people that the one thing you always have to learn from is from that feedback, and that feedback might need you to pivot and
Yeah.
pivot slightly, or maybe even in a broader case. But listen to the feedback because sometimes you do, especially as a founder, you get very, very, very closely attached to that. What's the biggest hurdle you had to overcome? Was it your funding? Was it your app? Was it people you were working with? What was the one hurdle that you said, wait a minute, that's the biggest one so far?
I think I don't even know if it's the biggest hurdle, but it's the biggest learning opportunity
Oh,
is really trying to figure out what is the pain point here.
yeah.
Because I can implement all these features that I think is important, but you have to really talk to your customers. Go out there and talk to them. Like You cannot assume that you know what their pain points are. Go out there and ask. I started asking as soon as I came up with the idea. I reached out to all of my friends who I've never had a sports conversation with, and I know for a fact they don't play fantasy football. I went out there and I just asked, "What do you know about fantasy football? And if you know what it is, why don't you play?" Two very simple questions gave me so much information. Just you have to ask the questions though. Like you can't just send out a survey or do any of that stuff. You can collect all this data, but it really starts with talking to your customers. Be be bold about it.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've been most impressed with over the several months that I've kind of watched you from a distance is that yeah, you're in the spotlight in a lot of different ways indirectly. So you do several podcasts like these. You get your story out there, your journey, which is a great story. You've sat on panels. You participate in some of these big conferences, and and I think and I want you to talk about this because I think it's really cool that you were invited to this thing in Vegas. This guy, I want to call it this think tank, but I know it's probably not the
Oh,
right.
Zero Labs.
Yeah, tell people about this. Is so cool. You need to tell people about what you did because at the end of the day, they picked you, and that's what's so cool about it.
I'm actually, this is new news. I'm actually headed back there. I was invited to be a subject matter expert back there to coach the next cohort of founders. So I'll be back there in January for the next cohort. But to answer your question, so Zero Labs is what they call a pre accelerator. You apply to be in a cohort of maybe 20 other founders, and it's a 3 day intensive boot camp. We're in class for 14 hours a day over a weekend in Vegas. And that whole weekend taught me so much more about there's more to Vegas than the strip, which that's a whole separate conversation, which
Oh
I'm
yeah.
sure you know this too. It was a 3 days where we worked on our pitch, we worked on our why, we worked on our stories, and then we worked on our total addressable market. How much money can you really make with this? It was basically like seminar after seminar, class after class. And then we learned, we went and applied it, and then we came back and we talked about it. So there was multiple modules in a day, and it was the quickest I have ever made changes to my company
Yeah.
and my idea. And it was because I feel like the trust that was built between us and the amazing team at Zero Labs who are really coaching us through all of this. And they are big champions for us. They want us to succeed, they want us to win, and they want to make connections for us. So
And didn't you, as a result of that, didn't you actually have a chance to make a presentation at another conference? And I'm trying to remember which conference it was because
yeah,
they all seem to run together.
yeah, the Global Gaming
Yeah,
Expo G2E
yeah.
follows that Zero Labs cohort in October. It's consecutively right after that, and so they chose companies from Zero Labs after our demo day. After we pitched, they chose a couple of companies to go and pitch at G2E in front of the other audience who's in the gaming space. So I got a chance to do that, and it was just so awesome.
Yeah, when you told me about that, it just blew me away. I just think it's a great story, and again, it's just a testament to what you're doing and how well you can articulate your vision. And I think you're going to be wildly successful, as you know. You know how I feel about that. Um, let's talk for just a couple of minutes before we kind of start to wrap up here. Talk about the FSGA.
Yeah.
Both you and I, full disclosure, both Kamini and I are very involved in the FSGA in various aspects of it. I think Kamini and I also represent a new voice to the FSGA, but it's also a community that is well regarded. It's done a lot of great work. And tell me about. I think you've been a member about as long as I have. Tell me, one, why did you join, and has it exceeded or certainly met your expectations?
It has, I feel like exceeded doesn't even do it justice. Like, what's the word beyond exceeded? um, I joined in February of 2025, so not even a year.
Right before the conference.
Yeah, right before the conference, I joined. I didn't know a soul going into FSGA, and I joined as a suggestion from a friend at Prize Picks who I've known since college. And he said, I reached out to him as soon as I had this idea. And I said, what do I do? Like, where do I go from here? And he said, our company is a big part of FSGA. You should go and just see what happens. And so I set up that initial call. I joined FSGA. I set up that initial call with Digger, and we had that call, and he said, yeah, just, come on over. And the funny part was that February conference, he couldn't even make it.
I
So I
know.
actually went in knowing, and nobody.
I was same way, same
He
way.
couldn't make it. Yeah, he couldn't make it to that conference. And so I really flew across the country, not knowing a soul. Um, and but when I got there, I was greeted with so many new faces, so many smiling faces. And I think also that speed networking event, which we all know is very famous at the FSGA conferences,
It's
that
crazy.
initial speed networking is when I met all the wonderful people who've shaped my journey the last 9 months almost.
Yeah, and I think I've told this to several new members and potential new members that one of the biggest benefits of the FSGA is what you just described, which is it's a very broad sense of community,
Yeah.
and the networking is phenomenal. But you got to put in what you make out of it, and I think you have done such a great job of navigating through that space a little bit. But I'm okay. So why did you not participate, and why have you not participated in the elevator pitch? You'd win it. You'd win it.
Yeah. So, oh, wow, that's, I'm touched. I was given this advice from someone who was telling me, and maybe this is wrong, I don't know, but I mean, at that point, I was so early on, I think that it had already closed by that point
It
when
had, I
I
think. You're right.
registered for the conference. Um, and I think, and I could be wrong, but I think everyone that had pitched had an app that was ready to be downloaded on the spot, almost like a call to action. And so I wasn't quite there just yet. My app is not in the app store yet. And so I wanted to make sure that, I have one shot to really get this right. And I want to make sure that I do it right for all the women out there who want to be a part of this world and for myself. And I know that it's never going to be perfect. No app is where it's at, that first iteration. But I want to be ready when I pitch that competition. I want to be ready, and I want to say, everybody go download this right now. Go to the App Store. It's there, top of the list. I kind of wanted to make sure I just had my ducks in a row. But
Yeah,
I'm not
and
the pitch competition. I think it's brilliant.
I think you would do fabulous. And the thing that I always tell people, though, I said, keep in mind that you literally have 3 minutes to tell your story.
You
Three is
do.
not a lot of time, as you
No, it goes
know.
by so fast. I've now been through two of them, and they go by so
It's
quick.
unbelievable. It's unbelievable. All right, so we're going to try to finish this up by you sharing with my audience is what would you want to share your experience as a startup today? What is the most gratifying thing about doing your own thing?
I think I would have to say the network of people that I have met along the way, other founders who I've actually think I've learned the most from them. Other founders are so willing to share their struggles, their challenges, what tools have worked well for them, what credit card do you open when you're a startup, what banks are, more welcoming to startups, what venture capitalists are welcoming to startups, what is pre-seed, what is seed funding. You don't learn any of this stuff when you're in school, unless, I mean, I think now there's more like entrepreneurship based academic programs, but you don't learn any of that stuff. And along the way, the people that I have met and been introduced to has been the most rewarding throughout this entire experience. This is how we met. This is how I've been on all of these different podcasts and panels. Everything has happened through an introduction to somebody that I've met along the way, just because I'm a founder and they just like what I'm doing. Or I tell people this all the time, be nice. People do things when they like you, and it's not hard to be kind and just put a smile on your face. And it sounds so silly to say it to people, but I really do like that really has done so much for me is just smiling and being inquisitive about, what someone else is doing and what their life story is.
Yeah, and you know how I feel about you. Yeah, I've told you from the very beginning. I'm so impressed with the how well spoken you are, how intelligent you are, and just
Thanks.
how engaging you are. Every time I see you, I always smile because you always have a smile on your face. So
I
that's really
try.
cool. So I always like to end things on a lighter note.
Okay.
And so this is going to be a question that it's going to be a different question for every guest that come on, but I'll kind of figure out what that question is during this conversation. But here it is for you. Since you're such a sports enthusiast
Okay.
and a sports fan for a long time, what is your favorite sports movie?
Oh my gosh.
See?
Favorite sports movie. And that's funny that we're talking about this because someone actually asked me this on a different podcast, but it wasn't like, what's your favorite sports movie? It's just what your favorite movie is. And my favorite movie is The Sandlot.
Oh,
And
well, okay.
that is, in my eyes, a sports movie
Yeah, it
because
is.
it is a good reminder of just being a kid, having fun outside during the summertime. And that reminds me so much of my own childhood. And that's a movie that I've watched countless times at this point. But it's also what taught me about Babe Ruth at a really young age because he was a big part of that movie. And talking about baseball, I had never really like gotten into baseball when I was younger. I had attended some Braves games here and there, but that movie is truly, I think, it's a good reminder to kids today to get off your iPads and your phones and go outside.
Well, if you're in Australia, you'd have to do that now because I've banned social media in
I
Australia.
know.
No political announcements. I just thought that was kind of but you're right. It's again, listen, it's a pleasure to have you on this show. Thank you for participating in Under the Hoodie podcast. You have an open invitation anytime you want to come on. Any big announcements you want to share them with us. And again, a pure pleasure. I'll see you in about 8 weeks or something like that. 2 months.
Mhm.
Have a wonderful holiday and stay in touch, please.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure. I'm glad we got to do this. We'll set up another call to
Yeah,
just chat
be well.
anyways.
We'll be
Yeah.
we'll be in touch soon. Kamini, thanks a lot. Oh, by the way,
Thank
we have. I just saw it today. Breaking news here is Nick, our producer, who's producing this podcast in the background right now. We just ordered our first hoodie, Under the Hoodie branded hoodies, and you're going to get one because you're one of our first guests.
I
So
can't
I'm
wait.
bringing one to Vegas for you.
I am honored.
You
I'm
have to wear it.
truly honored. Scott, you were also so respected in the industry. So I'm honored to be on your podcast,
Yeah.
truly.
You're one of a kind in my mind. So, and I wish I wish you all the best and all the success. And if you ever need any branding help, you know where to come. Kamini, thanks again. Happy holidays.
Thank you so much. Merry Christmas. I'll see you in a couple weeks.
You bet. Thanks
All
again.
right.
Bye bye.
Bye. Bye. Thanks, Nick.